I finally got around to watching all 10 2023 Best Picture nominees, and now here is my official ranking.
Talk, shop, pop, movies.
Ahoy there, this is Derek, the Convicted Cinephile, and if you're a convicted cinephile yourself, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel down below. On my channel, I like to talk, shop, and pop open, that is, movies and physical media. And yes, I finally did it with less than a week away, exactly a week away from today. It's Sunday as I'm recording. From the Academy Awards, I have to cram in at least the Best Picture nominees. Anything else on top of that is just gravy at this point. Some of them I saw in theaters. Honestly, only like 3 of them. It's just hard for me to get out and see movies that I want to see in theaters. Now that a lot of these are dropping on streaming services, I ended up buying digital versions of a few of these. I ended up renting 1 or 2 of them. I was gifted a digital copy of one, which was nice, but I do my best. I try to see all 10 movies, and I did. As far as the ranking goes, this was tough because I like all 10 of these movies. There's not one where I'm like, ugh, I hate that. Like there's always usually one every year, like Bohemian Rhapsody or some shit like that. There's a couple I like more than others. A lot of them are kind of in that 4 out of 5 star range, and it just kind of depends on the mood I'm in. This list could change in a year. If I rewatch all of these, I've only seen them each once, give or take an Oppenheimer, a quasi rewatch where I just kind of had it on in the background as I was doing stuff. But beyond that, yeah, I've only seen all these once, so this is pretty fresh takes on all of these movies. Some could go up, some could go down in the future after I think about them a little longer. Some have honestly gone up and down since watching the movies already, just because of how they stuck in my brain and what have you. So let's get into it. My number 10, as much as I liked this movie, is Maestro by Bradley Cooper. This is on Netflix, so it was like the easiest one to watch out of everything. Bradley Cooper is officially the most overdue person in Hollywood, it seems like, after having made Maestro. I was really rooting for him earlier in the season for maybe getting in for Best Acting and Makeup, that old combination of wins. Carey Mulligan, I thought, was just outstanding in this movie. She is arguably better than him in the film. I know people who didn't like this movie because it doesn't really go over Bernstein's career as much as they would prefer. I kind of liked that it was a different take on a biopic where it was about the relationship of the person as opposed to just his career, because I can Google what he did in his career and figure that out on Wikipedia or something. Would I have preferred a little more of his career in there? Maybe. Like, they didn't really go into it too much. It kind of jumps around a little too much to seem perfectly smoothly edited slash written. It's not going to win, any screenplay awards or directing because it's not nominated. This movie is shot beautifully. It has some of the best cinematography of the year. That's its nomination. The style of it is great. The costuming throughout the decades is beautiful. The performances, like I said, are all wonderful. It's just one of those movies that I doubt I would rewatch very often. And I feel like even though I didn't get to see much of his career, I still feel like I didn't learn a ton about the person overall. I learned about his relationship. You feel like you learn more about Carey Mulligan's character than him, which is sort of the biggest mistake of the movie, I feel. Everything you know about him in the beginning, you kind of know at the end. He sort of like discovers how to express these things, but you already sort of know these from the get-go, from the way the movie starts. It's more about her dealing with how he is than anything. So, Maestro, as much as I enjoyed the film, it's one I won't go back to often, so that's the main reason it's number 10. My number 9 on this list, one took me a while to see. This one might have been a problem of how overhyped it was by the time I watched it. I still enjoyed the film. Honestly, for about the first third, close to half of the movie, I was just kind of like, this is made really well, but I just don't care about what's going on. Luckily, that switched very strongly in the second half, and I'm referring to Celine Song's Past Lives. This movie has beautiful performances. It's shot wonderfully. Like, it's a beautiful looking movie. The second half with the dialogue, just the conversations between the three actors essentially who are in the film, is some of the best screenwriting I saw all year. Without that, essentially without Celine Song directing and writing this movie, if anyone else would have done the same movie, like take the same script even with a so-so, director for hire who's just there to make a movie, it would have been a piece of trash probably. Or even Celine Song directing a mediocre script, still would have been a piece of trash with the same story. Anyone else would have made this some sort of cliche romance melodrama, which the script is smart enough to like make fun of in the film itself. I ended up really liking it at the end. Like I said, the screenplay saved this movie. It went from being like a really well shot, decent movie that I'm like, okay, I'm a little bored by this, and I already kind of know where it's going, so I don't know what's going to happen that's going to make me fall in love with it. Luckily, there was something, and that was the conversations between the actors. So that saved this movie. That would make me go back to it sooner than Maestro. That's really the only reason it's above it. For how small of a film it is, like I said, it is shot beautifully. There's a lot of really lovely compositions in the film of the two lead characters, whether they're children or adults, being separated somehow, going up and down an alleyway and a staircase, even just something as simple as cracks in the sidewalk or poles on a subway separating the two. You could tell a lot of thought was put into how it was shot, and I appreciate that. And the cinematography on top of that was very lovely. It's not like super showy like movies like Maestro, for example, since I already spoke about that, but it does the job well and better than an average film would do. You can tell everyone who made this movie gave a shit, and that comes through. So, number 9 is Celine Song's Past Lives. Number 8 is one of the few comedies on this list. It's nice. There's 4 movies you could argue are comedies in this Best Picture lineup, which is great. Like, we're lucky if we get one sometimes. But this was a good year for comedies in the Best Picture category. Number 8 is Greta Gerwig's Barbie, which, once again, by the time I saw it, it had already been the biggest movie of the year at that point. I saw it pretty much as soon as it was available digitally. I watched it then, so it was, not too long after it came out, but long enough where I was like, oh god, hopefully this is as good as people are making it out to be. Some people are obsessed with this movie, some people fucking hated it. I don't see either argument, to be honest. It was kind of like, yeah, this is really good. It's funny. I would rewatch it because of the comedy more so than the other two on the list I've already talked about. That's really the only reason it's at number 8. Out of the 3, this is the one I'm itching to rewatch the most, and half of that's just because I watched it longer ago than the other two. But everyone involved in the movie does a wonderful job. Margot Robbie, lovely as always, both acting and wise and just her presence in the film as Barbie. Ryan Gosling is hilarious as Ken, one of the many Kens. The whole ensemble does a great job taking the movie just seriously enough where it's a real movie and not so funny that it's dumb. Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach wrote it together, which is lovely. The only reason I kind of hope it would win screenplay, I don't hope that, but is that they would both win an Oscar together, and that's adorable. The Barbie storyline and the America Ferrera storyline and the Ken storyline all seemed uneven. I don't know. As I was watching it, I didn't really click with all of them. They all seemed sort of shoehorned into each other to an extent where it seemed a little, like I always say, clunky. That's the best way I could describe it. None of them are necessarily bad in any way. They just all seem like a couple different movie ideas merged into each other the best they could possibly do. But out of like respect for the concept, Greta does an amazing job with it. Like she took something that should not have worked on paper or on screen at all and made probably the best possible movie she could have made out of this IP. 99% of other people would have just made some shitty toy commercial movie for 90 minutes. And if you would have taken it too seriously, it would have been no fun to watch and everyone would have hated it. So she found arguably the perfect mix of comedy and drama with the Barbie film, making it resonate with audiences, mostly female, obviously, given the subject matter. The best things about the film, the costume design and art direction are executed perfectly. They recreated the toys to the same scale as the dolls with the human actors, which is brilliant. I love that they followed through with that amount of detail that much. And then the costumes recreating the toys is done perfectly. So Barbie is a solid movie, one I would rewatch more often than the other ones below it, and that's the only reason it is number 8 on my list. On to number 7. Number 7 was one I just watched a couple days ago, and that is Justine Triet's Anatomy of a Fall from France. It's a murder mystery film. Her husband dies mysteriously by falling out of a windowsill onto like a shed and onto the snowy ground of their little cabin house, whatever you want to call it. Their son, who has vision impaired son, he's not blind, but he's can't see well, finds his body, and then it's up to you slash the movie to decide if she killed the husband or if he fell. And the movie does a great job of not pointing you too far in one way or the other. Sandra Hüller is wonderful in the film. Brain farting on the kid's name, but he does an excellent job too for his age. He's like 11 or 12 years old. Great performance from that kid. It's a pretty straightforward murder mystery courtroom drama movie. So I don't understand, like, some people think it's like the best thing since sliced bread. I'm like, it's a thing we've all seen before on various TV shows and movies. But yes, it is done very, very well. The writing is very good. Like I said, it doesn't point you one way or the other. It doesn't make anything too obvious. Once you start to lean one way, they unveil just enough backstory of the husband to make it seem like he may have killed himself, and it kind of just wavers back and forth. But like I assumed even before I watched it, they don't tell you what actually happened. It's up to you to decide, which I like ambiguous endings. I don't have to have everything spoon fed to me. I prefer it that way, to be honest. Just the fact that I already guessed that within 2 seconds of the movie starting, basically, it was kind of like, okay, I already know the ending of this movie, and now I have to sit through 2.5 hours of stuff to get to that part. But luckily, this stuff is very good. It's a 2.5 hour long film. I thought it was way too long. And there's some long movies on this list that are above this movie, so I don't dislike long movies. Given how much actually goes on in the film and how long it is, I think they could have easily trimmed it down to like a solid 2 hour long movie. You wouldn't have missed too much here and there. Some people probably love it at the length it's at. I prefer it shorter. I would think it would be a better movie if it was cut together a little better. It is edited well. There's nothing bad about it. I just think it overstays its welcome in the long run. But all the performances are great. The writing is great. This is one I thought of a little longer after the fact. I was going to give a lower review to this one, and then the more I thought about it, her character being a writer and how everything plays out in the movie, I thought was super clever after the fact. So because of it lingering in my brain for just a couple of days, it bumped it up the list. Definitely, if you haven't seen it, worth a watch. If you're not into foreign films, this is a very easy one to watch because it's in, at least half of it is in English, and the parts that aren't are very easy to follow. But Anatomy of a Fall, solid movie. I definitely want to rewatch it because I feel like I miss things and I will notice little things going back into it. That's the cool thing about murder mystery movies like this. So it does require a rewatch, in my opinion. So that is why Anatomy of a Fall is number 7. On to number 6. This is another movie that is very long, the longest movie on this list, Killers of the Flower Moon. Like I said, it's almost an hour longer than Anatomy of a Fall, but it doesn't feel as long. It doesn't feel too long to me. Some people it does, I know. But this movie is paced so well that the 3.5 hour long runtime seems warranted. It makes it hard to rewatch because it takes so much time to watch it, which is its biggest downfall, I'd say. But I actually really, really like this movie. You feel like you learned something at least when you watched it, given the Native American culture that it portrays in the film. Lily Gladstone has like this quiet intensity about her that I love. Robert De Niro is the best I've seen him in, I can't even know how long, years and years. He was the most interesting and entertaining character in the film. He was playing one of the best villains I've seen in a long time. One you love at the beginning, and then you just slowly learn to hate more and more through the film once you realize what he's up to. And I like Leonardo DiCaprio's performance quite a bit. He's basically a giant dumbass who can't choose a side. He's like a spineless doof who loves his wife, but is also constantly trying to kill her. And he just cannot choose a side. He cannot choose to do what's right or wrong, one way or the other. And it's a very conflicted character. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was a good movie. The ending is great. The radio program ending that shows in a very creative way just how unimportant these events were at the time to these people, preceded by 3-ish hours of just this blood-soaked drama of these people being murdered strategically for land and money. And it's a powerful story that needs to be told, and I'm glad I got to watch it. I do want to watch it again, but I really enjoyed Killers of the Flower Moon. I thought it was shot beautifully. The pacing was great considering its length. All the performances were great. The cinematography was lovely. The costumes and art direction and everything like that on point, like every Martin Scorsese movie. There's pretty much nothing bad about it. The biggest nitpick you could give it is that it's so long, but I liked how long it was because the pacing made it seem not long as much as like premeditated. It gets to the point where you're in the rhythm with what's going on with this movie, where all of these murders are just becoming commonplace. Like it's not even a shock anymore. They're like, oh, this guy's dead. It's Tuesday. It takes its time intentionally to make it seem like these murders happening aren't even shocking anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so long and takes its time doing what it does. And I appreciated that. I think that's what he was kind of going for. And if not, then it worked for me either way. So he can't go wrong, really, Mr. Scorsese. He knows what he's doing. He's made a couple good movies in the past. But Killers of the Flower Moon, a very solid one. I want to own all of these on physical media one day. Killers of the Flower Moon, solid at number 6. Number 5. This movie hits you like a ton of bricks as long as you're willing to take that hit. And that is Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest. I would honestly put this higher on my list, but it has probably the least rewatch value of any movie on here, but it's done so well that I know I'm going to watch it again because of its subject matter. It's just a tough watch. Like most of the movies on this list, it's acted well. It's shot beautifully. The production design is outstanding. I wish I would have gotten nominated for it. The storyline, there's not much of one. It's a very simple story. It's a family drama about this family who happens to be in charge of Auschwitz concentration camp. And the fact that the concentration camp is there is like almost an afterthought with the way this movie's made, and that's what makes it so great, is that it's just there. Like it's not it doesn't even matter to them like what it is because they're so used to it at this point. It's just his job and he goes to work and the family lives next door to it in this gorgeous house that's super modern for its time and everything about it's beautiful and it looks almost exactly like the real place. Like I've seen images. And the kids are playing in the backyard and the mom's visiting and they're growing this beautiful garden to make up for the horrors that are going on the other side, even though it seems more of like a subconscious thing to the character in the film who's doing it because Sandra Hüller once again is in this movie as the wife. She seems almost worse of a human being than the father who is running Auschwitz, which is saying something. You don't learn a ton about the family. You just see them as they are. They're just living in this scenario. But what makes this movie so brilliant is the sound design of the film, which everyone has talked to, ad nauseum. But it makes the movie. Like if it wins sound at the Oscars over Oppenheimer, which I doubt it will, I will be very happy because it is deserving. It has the most attention to detail put into its sound design out of any movie I've seen in recent memory. The sounds and some of the imagery in this film are just haunting. I won't talk about it much because I've already done a video about this, but The Zone of Interest is a fantastic movie. It might be a tough rewatch, but it is something I would rewatch because it's made so well and the attention to detail is just outstanding. So that's why it's at number 5 on my ranking. On to number 4. This is the one I finally watched last night. This is fresh in my head. It's the last one I needed to watch, and that is American Fiction. This movie is hilarious. I debated putting it higher on the list, but some things made me keep it here. But number 4 on a list of these movies is nothing to sneeze at. Jeffrey Wright is pitch perfect in this role. No one else could have played it as well as he does. It's just about a black writer who doesn't write black enough. And as a joke, he writes the most stereotypical black book you could ever imagine. And it's the biggest success of his life. And no matter what he does to try to make it even more of a joke, it just keeps going in his favor, and it's really funny. It's really clever. I laughed harder at one line in this movie than anything else I've laughed at least this entire year. And by this year, I mean 2023. So points for you, American Fiction, for that. It's also a sweet, touching family drama with some surprising twists and turns in it that I did not expect. So you learn a lot about this person and his family, and it's a very sweet movie, but most importantly to me, it's a very funny movie, and it does its type of comedy about as perfectly as it can. But yeah, it's a good comedy about writing and filmmaking as well, so I can understand why the Academy likes it so much. They love their movies. Writers love their movies about writers, and Hollywood loves its movies about movies, and this has a little bit of both in there. So I could see why it's so successful at the Oscars. I think it will win adapted screenplay, and after watching it finally, I kind of hope it does, because I thought it was written stupendously. Like I said, before, comedy goes a long way, and when you can relate it to something in the biz, that's what we call it here in Hollywood, yeah, it just makes it that much better. And it and it just makes you laugh at yourself for being a stupid white guy like myself. Yeah, American Fiction, solid movie. Try to watch it as soon as you can. It's worth your while. It's hilarious. So number 4, American Fiction. Number 3 is another comedy, and that is going to be Alexander Payne's The Holdovers. I really like The Holdovers for similar reasons I liked American Fiction. It's just sharp and witty. Paul Divine Joy Randolph is wonderful. At least she's going to win at the Oscars. It gets one guaranteed win. I would favorite movies of the 2000s, if not of all time. It's another example of a perfect comedy drama where everything hits you in the feels just hard enough and makes you laugh just as much as that, if not more so. So The Holdovers, very solid movie. One I want to rewatch. Out of everything on this list, it's the one I want to rewatch first. So that goes a long way. Holdovers is number 3. Number 2 is the other comedy on this list, Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos. This movie is also hilarious in a very different way than the other two, but it does also have very funny, creative dialogue in it. A lot of funny one-liners sprinkled throughout. Emma Stone is brilliant. I'm rooting for her for Best Actress. Her infant brain in a adult body performance all the way through her matured self is perfect throughout the movie as she ages and matures. Mark Ruffalo is hilarious. I've always loved Mark Ruffalo. So it's fun seeing him in like a comedic villain role, which he's just never done. He's just one of the actors I've always loved. The only reason I have Poor Things above The Holdovers is because of the technical aspects of the film, the way it's shot, the cinematography, the lens choices are so jarring. How it goes from just like super wide angles to super fisheye lenses, like shot to shot, showing around corners of rooms. It's really interesting how it's done. It doesn't, it's like it's a little distracting, but I think it's supposed to be. But it never makes you like lose yourself in the moment. You're always right there with the characters whenever it happens. The production design is the best of the year. So goes for the costumes. All the sets are gorgeous. The visual effects are gorgeous, despite not being nominated. The music is great. It's a weird, funky score that fits the weird, funky movie perfectly. It's a Frankenstein romantic comedy drama film. I don't know. Is that the best way to describe it? It's a horny movie, as we joke. You see Emma Stone naked about 35% of the film, probably, and she goes for it in many ways, and it pays off in the long run. Everyone is acting at an 11 in this movie. Willem Dafoe as well. He's outstanding. Mark Ruffalo, like I said, he steals the show in most of the scenes he's in, and Emma Stone is just out of this world crazy good. So Poor Things, because it's one of the examples of every single thing about this movie being about as good as anything could be in a movie, is why it's my number 2 on my list. And if you know what's nominated, it makes it pretty obvious what is number 1. I am a simp. I guess I'm a simple man, and I love me some Oppenheimer. It is arguably Christopher Nolan's best work. It is the culmination of everything he does great all at once, the best he's probably ever done it. And that goes with how he merges score with editing and sound design and And for the first time, I would say his acting performances in his film actually make you feel things. He's sort of a cold director where a lot of the acting performances, while they're always good, they never like hit you on an emotional level in a lot of his movies. That's my biggest problem with his movies, is that you don't really like love and care for the characters. You're mostly just there for the awe and the experience of the film itself because they're always so big and brilliantly done. This one actually has real life characters you can get to know and feel for in the film, mostly Oppenheimer himself. And Cillian Murphy does a brilliant job. It's a very understated performance. I'm a fan of those. Very internalized, like Lily Gladstone's performance. It's very in the face and the eyes and just how she carries herself. And that's how Cillian Murphy is in Oppenheimer. He doesn't have too many big, showy Oscar clip moments. He's just always there emoting and showing in his eyes and his face exactly how he feels at any given second, and he does it flawlessly. So, if and when he wins his Best Actor trophy, I'll be very happy for him. I've always loved Cillian Murphy. A lot of times, especially in the Christopher Nolan movies, he's just kind of a side character. This is the first time he's been a lead in a Christopher Nolan movie, and he just knocks it out of the park. And it's going to be cool that they'll probably both be winning Academy Awards for their films together on the same film, and I like that about it. It's just so captivating and beautiful, the way it's shot, the way it's cut together. It builds and builds and builds and builds to the crescendo of the bomb test, as we all know. And that scene is just beautifully done. The way the overexposure and everything, the ensemble cast, which won at the SAG Awards, is great, especially David Krumholtz and Benny Safdie, who were not included in the ensemble, but I need to mention them again every time because they are two of the best supporting performances in the film, even though they weren't honored with a statuette at the SAG Awards, sadly. And of course, Robert Downey Jr. in his inevitable Oscar-winning role as well as the closest thing this movie has to a villain, and he just takes over that third act. Once that bomb test is over, a lot of people are like, why is this movie still going? That should be the end. But it's not the end. You need to see the aftermath of what the bomb does and how it affects people. And the last line of the movie hits you in the gut just as much as Oppenheimer's speech once they do drop the bombs on Japan. That scene is wonderful as well. Sad, but wonderful in how it's made and how it portrays the things that happened. Robert Oppenheimer wasn't in Japan when it fell. He doesn't know what it looks like. He just gets to see images and things that his mind comes up with, filling in the gaps, and that's what the film does. And I think that's more horrifying than seeing the actual images for every reason possible. It being the best movie a director has ever made, at least arguably. It might not be my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, but I do genuinely think it's the best thing he's ever done objectively. Oppenheimer is my number one film. What is your personal list? Comment it down below if you've made it this far. I want to know your top 10. And if my wife will give me hers, I'm going to also show hers quick at the end of this video. Once again, my name is Derek, the Convicted Cinephile. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Talk, shop, pop, movies.